My love for the Wild West genre goes back to my childhood when I would watch Clint Eastwood movies. I remember rewatching VHS tapes of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, A Fistful of Dollars even. Beyond those movies, I even loved those comedic pictures by Bud Spencer and Terence Hill. Remember those guys? And over the years, I've kept up with the genre, enjoying both TV shows and movies that explored adventures based in the Wild West. In fact, one of my most favorite movies of all time is the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Frost. So it kind of goes without saying that I was excited to dive into the world of Red Dead Redemption 2, especially after being so captivated by the adventures of John Marston in Red Dead Redemption on the PS3. And now, years after its initial release, it feels fair to say we are not short of reasons why Red Dead Redemption 2 is an amazing achievement. The game represents the cream of the crop when it comes to world building and creating vast and beautiful open worlds where players can get lost in for years, to be fully honest. The amount of content here is staggering. You don't have to look far to find testimonies online about the endless groundbreaking elements that make this game so great. I have my own laundry list of reasons why this game is truly something special. I love the massive vistas and seemingly endless open world. I love the characters and the many side characters. I love the main narrative and the many side quests along with random encounters with interesting NPCs. Sometimes I just like riding around and doing nothing. In this video, I wanted to commend the game for its attempt at handling the very sensitive topic of racism and the portrayal of an America after formalized slavery. Even though the game's depiction of the Jim Crow era is not flawless and its main characters do not react realistically in certain racially sensitive situations, I think the attempt is still commendable. Without examining the entire game to bring this point home, I want to highlight one side mission that executed this with great effect. Unlike my favorite childhood gunslinging action spaghetti westerns, the game refuses to overlook what was a disturbing and unethical aspect of American culture during this time period. Those films seem to exist in a satellite world that is removed from the harsher realities that existed in parallel with their Western setting, often completely leaving out the representation of other racial groups, or if they do, it will be more of a misrepresentation. But there's a particular side mission in this game that really created a truly lasting impression on me, and I keep returning to it in my mind whenever I reflect on the impact video games can have on players. This is Jeremiah Thompson, and he's a little compromised at the moment, but we will return to the cause of his demise later on in the video. For now, it is enough to say that he probably deserved this. I stumbled upon Jeremiah Thompson just outside the train station in the town of Rhodes. It appeared to be just another typical funny little interaction with a weird NPC. On its face, this side quest is unassuming, but I soon realized that it was packing quite a punch. I tend to sympathize with NPCs in distress, at least on the first playthrough, so I decided to help when he asked me to retrieve some items for him back in his homestead. I went to the location on the map and sure enough, found his dilapidated house. Upon inspecting some of the items in the house, we learn a few things about Jeremiah. There is a notice on the door from a judge regarding the foreclosure of his house from the Bank of Rhodes. An empty bottle, which is rare in this game, probably pointing to Jeremiah's descent into alcoholism. A child's drawing dedicated to Jeremiah. A family portrait, which is a gift from the Ascension Plantation thanking him for retrieving their property. A particular mention is made to Jeremiah's cunningness and comparing it to that of his father. I think this references the types of deceitful methods that must have been used to capture runaway slaves. A note from someone named Rance referring to Jeremiah as Pa and saying the boy wants nothing to do with him. A letter detailing communication from his employer about the termination of his employment. There is a sequence with these two guys. They're quickly taken care of. and that gives us the pistol that we were looking for. And then we find the trapdoor after studying the picture of Mr. Compson, and we descend into the basement. Investigating the Compson basement was a truly revolting experience. Here we find where human beings were chained and held captive in some of the worst conditions. We see ropes, chains, and hooks where people were confined. The tiny little windows up on the filthy walls. We see whips, neck collars, and other torture devices littered around the room. And finally, we find a note written by one of the captives, and it tells a horrific story about how this person was kidnapped near the town of Rhodes. We also find the ledger we were tasked to retrieve, and in it we find names, a list of slave names, and the corresponding prices paid for their so-called recovery.
This your ledger? A list of slaves?
Rewards. January 15th, Betsy, $17. January 18th, Louise, $12. May 18th, Wilfred, $18. May 24th, Minnie and Child, $20.
As you can tell, Arthur is very unsettled by this discovery, and frankly, so was I. I was taken from a place of compassion for this old man out on his luck to a place of what I can only describe as a simmering rage. I mean, now we are clearly talking about a horrible human being. For now, my actions from this point on regarding this particular errand were driven purely by emotion. I wanted to make him pay for what he did. I don't think I've hated an NPC more in my 30 plus years of playing video games, even more than Ellie during the fight with her and Abby in the theater in The Last of Us Part 2. At that point, I was so angry with Ellie and just wanted to make her stop. Behind every button press was an almost genuine emotional drive. It felt transcendental, as if the characters had transformed into actual real people. It is a feature that is common in film, but it is rare in video games. And when it does happen, it greatly accentuates the medium's immersiveness. In a short time, the game made me feel compassion, curiosity, and then a hateful rage for Jeremiah. I think this is great storytelling and also a fantastic display of courage by the company to even venture in this direction. It would have been easier to create a safe and streamlined Wild West fantasy, but instead Rockstar took the high road and decided not to shy away from the ugly parts of American history. We are presented with it in a way that is uncompromising and unflinching. In its own way, the game tries to highlight the inhumane brutality of the slave trade and gives us a glimpse of what life must have been like for Black people during this time. In conclusion, I found this to be a very compelling side story that is still with me to this day, years after playing it for the first time. This is an undeniably important time period in American history, and it is important for art to capture, preserve, and even question some of the tragic events that shape the world as we know it today. I feel as the medium of video games matures, so should some of its content and subject matter. And although this was a step in the right direction in terms of unpacking some of these very sensitive issues that we all have to grapple with, I still wish the game could have gone a step further by maybe having Lenny be part of this mission to have a Black voice and comment and respond and react in certain situations. It would have been a much deeper story, and it would have had a deeper meaning also if Lenny's lost pocket watch was somehow connected to this story. Or maybe having Arthur say more to Jeremiah after learning the truth about him and clearly expressing to him why what he did was wrong. And lastly, clearly Compson is wrong and deserves whatever comes to him for his crimes. But it would have been interesting to question whether or not there is a path for redemption for people like Jeremiah. Arthur explores his painful path towards redemption, so maybe the theme could have expanded to cover other characters within the wider story of Red Dead Redemption 2.